Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. A results roundup today covering 4 heavyweight fights. So the Jared Anderson Ryad Merhy fight, the less said about that the better, but we'll talk about it briefly. Efe Ajagba, Guido Vianello, a very fun fight. Wasn't always pretty and some big momentum swings. Also, you had a new heavyweight prospect Ali Feliz on that same Jared Anderson card. And in Germany, Oleksandr Zakhozhyi took the European title. So we'll cover that at the back end of the video. So first things first, Jared Anderson having a main event in Corpus Christi, Texas. He was facing Ryad Merhy. Merhy was coming off a win over Tony Yoka, career best performance for the former cruiserweight. But obviously he left all of whatever he did in Europe because he did not come to fight. Terrible performance by Ryad Merhy, who put the earmuffs on, barely threw any punches. And I think there was a stat near the end of the fight that it was amongst the lowest punches ever thrown in a heavyweight fight to go that sort of distance. So terrible performance, and all he was looking for occasionally was a counter. And it was only the 10th round where Merhy decided, I might let my hands go a bit and see what happens. But obviously, for fans watching at home and those in the arena, it was pretty depressing stuff. And, I don't think we need to see Ryad Merhy on the stage again. It was his opportunity after a big win over Tony Yoka to go to the United States and try to do something. But he didn't or couldn't or wouldn't, and obviously that led to a terrible viewing spectacle. For his performance, Jared Anderson, obviously he was in control, took this one pretty easily. He was probing with the jab, trying to break Merhy down, trying to work into body and head. But it is always pretty difficult to look good against someone who is being so negative and who doesn't come to win, because he didn't. Merhy was just uber negative, and it was bad to watch. I guess the thing is, we saw through the fight, Anderson tried a couple of different things to try to, open Merhy up. Didn't really have a lot of success, and maybe there'll be questions about, is Jared Anderson's power, on that sort of world level? Perhaps not. He didn't really seem to put a dent in Merhy. He wasn't able to sort of punch through the guard. He didn't really touch him up to the body where you sort of thought, Merhy's about to drop here. But he was constantly, and I guess this is the other side of the coin that we have said before, it's been hard for Anderson to get rounds, and he needs rounds, he needs experience, and against guys that aren't necessarily going to give him what he wants, he had to work for it in this performance. He had to rack up the rounds behind the jab. He was being somewhat cautious, not trying to sort of fall into Merhy's sort of trap of opening up and then getting countered and exposing himself to something big. So, decent performance by Anderson, but perhaps there was a little bit more that he could have done. I think that will be the argument. Should he have done a little bit more? In terms of Merhy, never want to see him again. So we'll move on from there to the co-main event. You had Efe Ajagba versus Guido Vianello. This was a very fun fight. It wasn't always pretty, and there were some big momentum swings. It was one of these sorts of fights where you sort of thought the guy who wins this is going to stay on top rank, and the loser possibly is going to get dropped. A loser leaves town type fight. As it ended up happening, I think, with the result, it was a split decision win to Efe Ajagba. It's a little bit of a question mark about the what next promotionally for the loser, who was Guido Vianello. So you had the first 3 rounds, possibly some of the best of Guido Vianello that I've seen of his career so far. I've always just been lukewarm on Vianello because he's really failed to impress for the most part. Sometimes he's put in pretty turgid performances. Not those first 3 rounds, though. He was in control, really looping that right hand and having success in the first round. Second round, absolutely rocked Ajagba to his core with a big right hand and left hook and was unloading on him until the bell effectively saved Ajagba. And then the third round, it was a bit of a continuation, strong round for Vianello. But all the effort and exertion from those first 3 rounds took a toll, because from round 4, Efe Ajagba, who'd looked a bit out of sorts and hadn't really got into the fight, and his defense was pretty shocking for the first few rounds. He looked pretty in control and assured behind the back of the jab, the 1-2, and all of a sudden he's landing left uppercuts, right uppercuts, and in control of the fight. It was a pretty huge momentum swing as Vianello's tank went from pretty full to pretty low. And it was a continuation for about 4 or 5 rounds where Ajagba pretty much in complete control. You had Vianello in round 7 trying to sort of turn the tide a little bit through a lot of punches, but there was quite, and the commentators noted this as well, he was throwing a lot, but he was really having to work hard, and Ajagba, it didn't really seem to be phasing him. But towards the back end of the fight, the 4 or 5 rounds that Ajagba was in complete control, you had a bit of a switch right near the end, rounds 9 and 10, as Ajagba started to tire. And by this stage, from round 8, Ajagba had turned southpaw. Initially in round 8, he had some success. Vianello struggled for the first couple of minutes when Ajagba was in the southpaw stance to really figure him out. And Ajagba had a decent bit of success. But perhaps he should have turned back orthodox when Vianello started to figure him out and have more success, because round 9, round 10, you saw that Vianello was having a bit of a second wind, and Ajagba was the one that was starting to look a little bit tired there. And I gave Vianello the last couple of rounds. Round 9 was quite tight. So on my card, and I think I said on Twitter, it's either 5-5 or potentially 6-4 to Ajagba. So I wasn't going to be surprised if that ended in a draw, because Vianello's performance, you had the first 3 rounds, which was very strong, and the last couple of rounds he finished strong, and it was sort of bookended with, you had Ajagba in the middle with basically giving Vianello a bit of a pasting for about 5 rounds. So very entertaining fight, big momentum swings. And I thought, it's very hard to sort of see the back of these guys off these performances, because when it came out, split decision 6-4 to Ajagba on 2 cards and 6-4 to Vianello on the other, although I didn't necessarily see Vianello getting 6 rounds in that fight, I did think, based off that performance, because it felt like it was a loser leaves town fight, I actually wanted to see Vianello again, because he actually showed us something. He was fighting for his career, and he was fighting hungry in those first few rounds before the gas tank faded. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next. And I guess you also have to say the win Johnny Rice had over Vianello looks even better now. So you have a situation where perhaps Ajagba, question mark about whether he should have looked better, because this seemed relatively evenly matched. And I think ahead of the fight, most of us would have said that Ajagba was the hot favourite and he should do a number on Vianello. But he didn't. There was a bit more punch variety from Ajagba through the fight, especially with the variation of uppercuts. Remember, he used to be a bit of a 1-2 merchant and not much else. But the defence was pretty poor, although there was one bit in round 5 where he, maybe for the first time in his career, was spotted using head movement. And I had to laugh when he was doing that against a very, very tired-looking Vianello. But, it's an interesting question about the what next, because maybe Top Rank had an idea that Ajagba was staying on and Vianello might sort of drift off. Who knows? Maybe Vianello's contract won't be renewed, but I guess it's a little less clear about what happens for both of them after that fight. Also on the undercard, heavyweight prospect Ali Feliz, who's signed with Top Rank. He actually opened up the card on the prelims, so this was way early in the night. He was facing Anthony Woodson, and this was all over inside 2 rounds. So a little bit sort of wild and excitable at times for the young heavyweight, 20 years old, but very good sort of combination and a good-looking stoppage to get the win and notch his first pro win in his career. So more to come from Ali Feliz. Definitely a project, and they're going to have to give him some time. And the fact that they put him at the start of the broadcast, I thought was kind of a good thing, because sometimes broadcasters with up-and-coming heavyweights can sort of, and I guess we've seen this at different points, put them sort of second or third, in the bill, and they end up fighting a Neville nobody, and it's kind of like, well, what's the point? So at least I think they're going to give him some room and time to grow, and he's got plenty of time on his side. So 1-0 for Ali Feliz. And moving to Germany, so we have a new European champion. So in the past 10 years or so, you've had the likes of Agit Kabayel, who's been the European champion a couple of times, Robert Helenius, Kubrat Pulev, Tyson Fury. So joins good company. Oleksandr Zakhozhyi stops Granit Shala inside a couple of rounds, and this from the outset looked like a little bit of a mismatch. And so I'm not exactly sure of the circumstances leading to this fight. Obviously the EBU had called the fight, and Granit Shala's team must have won the purse bid, but right from the get-go, and I'm not even sure how he got in position to be fighting for the European title. There's effectively nothing on his record, but you did have him happily standing at the end of Oleksandr Zakhozhyi, the 6'9" Ukrainian's reach, happy to stand there, and he really wasn't able to close the distance, nor did he really try to. And effectively in the second round, when you had Zakhozhyi starting to warm things up, he was able to catch and tag Granit Shala multiple times. Big right hand landed, left hooks, a couple of really left hooks sort of started the rot, and there was a body shot that came in right to the midsection, and literally it looked, you know, when people say they were doubled over by a punch, this was the in-ring sort of demonstration of that, because he was doubled over, and it was all she wrote not long after that. Granit Shala stopped by Oleksandr Zakhozhyi, and he is the European champion, and he'd been out for more than a year, so let's hope Zakhozhyi is back soon and against some better competition. Perhaps, you know, there's some guys floating around the European scene that might be, you know, good for this belt. I mean, I wonder if the likes of Fraser Clark, or potentially Fabio Wardley, or even maybe someone like a Vlad Tsarenko, his compatriot, Ukrainian, maybe Tsarenko would be a good fight for Zakhozhyi. Plenty of guys floating around either on that fringe European level that would be good opponents for Zakhozhyi, who I think needs bigger tests to really sort of see where he's at, because to me it's a little unclear. I'm not really projecting him at this stage based on what I'm seeing to sort of go towards the world level, but he really hasn't been put in the situations to test how far he can go. Let's face it, 6'9". If he can use his attributes well, he's a hard guy to beat, but has he got the rest of the skills and polish in his game to take him all the way, or close to all the way? We'll have to see. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.